In this video, we conclude our discussion on Chapter 5, where our topic will be inflation data. In today's video, make note of GDP deflator, inflation rate, real wage, and real interest rate data. To begin, we're going to look at St. Louis Federal Reserve data on the GDP deflator for the United States. Whereas before, the data set is going to be annual data from 1959 to 2024. And as before, our base year is going to be 2017, where for our GDP deflator, this means that in 2017, it's going to carry a value of 100. Okay, let us now look at our GDP deflator data for the US, where turning to our run plot, on the vertical axis, we have the price index values, and on the horizontal axis, we have years. As mentioned, with the base year being 2017, that is when the GDP deflator is going to have a value of 100. And the board's not cooperating with that point, but now it is. All right, cool. Now, what can we observe about the GDP deflator? It is the price on the basket of all goods and services produced. It serves as our price level, and over time, it seems to be roughly increasing. Well, if it is roughly increasing and it is the price level, then by definition, that is inflation. Inflation is a rise in the price level of the economy. Okay, so inflation seems to be something expected in the US. All right, well, we need not fret yet because remember that this is a comparative thing too. We need to see how prices are changing compared to income as well as interest rates, as this can give us a better idea in terms of how is the purchasing ability of consumers in our economy changing. Okay, but before we get there, let us transform our GDP deflator in percentage change form to give us the inflation rate and see what else we can say. Okay, so we've transformed the GDP deflator into the inflation rate, percentage change form, where as before, by putting a variable in percentage change form, we do lose one observation. We are now looking at 1960 through 2024, where in terms of our run plot, we have percent on the vertical, year on the horizontal. There seems to be fluctuations in the inflation rate, which we have seen in prior percentage change form variables, where in terms of these fluctuations, they seem to be moving against the value of 3%. Well, we define price stability to be an inflation rate of 3% or less. So this is good, perhaps, but let's not get ahead of ourselves in that we do have access to summary statistics now. So if we were to hard calculate the mean, instead what we would see is an average value of 3.31%, which is greater than 3%. So on average, inflation is to be expected, and on average, we should expect an inflation rate of 3.31% on a given year, which is just outside of our range of price stability. Okay. That may not be the end of the world in that if we consider the standard deviation of 2.26%. So on average, we are just shy of price stability. However, most fluctuations are within 3.31%, give or take 2.26 percentage points. So we do meet price stability within one standard deviation from the mean. Okay. Now, the final thing that we want to say on this slide is, well, how does the price level move with real GDP? For that, we can turn our attention to the scatter plot on the bottom of the slide, where inflation rate is going to be on the horizontal, real GDP growth on the vertical, where if we were to draw a line of best fit, it seems to be the case that as we travel rightwards, so an increase in the inflation rate, it seems to be the case that we can travel downwards on the vertical axis, giving us a downward sloping line of best fit, or that there is a negative association between the price level and real GDP, or another way of saying that is that the price level is countercyclical. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to look at income as well as interest rate data so that we can compare that with our price level data to get a better sense of how is agent purchasing power in the US changing over time. So, as mentioned, we've looked at inflation data. The GDP deflator is increasing over time, so by definition, inflation on average 3.31% and is countercyclical. Now what we want to do is, how is income from labor and how is interest rate on savings changing? As we can compare price level changes to income and savings changes to see how purchasing ability is changing. So this will require us to make a note between nominal and real variables as well, as we're going to look at the real wage and the real interest rate. This is not going to be too foreign in that when we were developing GDP, we mentioned nominal GDP. That was total output in an economy using current year prices. Whereas real GDP, this was total output measured in constant prices. So this is going to be the same for wages and interest rates. So a nominal variable is going to be one that does not control for prices, and we can think about it as being expressed in money units. This is different from a real variable that controls for prices, where we can think about this being expressed in basket units. In that, say that we had a basket of goods and it cost $100 and there was one basket. The nominal way to express that is the basket is $100. The real way to express that is there is one basket. What we want to then do is look at income and interest rates in terms of those ways as well too. Okay, the first way we're going to do this is we're going to look at wages. Okay, so when we go to work, we get paid in income. We get paid X dollars. So let's use the previous example of the $100 basket. The nominal wage would be you get paid $100. The real wage, or how many baskets can you afford with that income, is going to be, well, if you get paid $100, the price of a basket is $100, your real wage is you walk away or have the purchasing capability of one basket. Okay, so then the way that we are defining this is that the real wage is income from labor after taking into account inflation. The way that we can mathematically calculate this is wages divided by the price level. So this is going to tell you, with the income that you are earning, how many baskets can you afford? Let us look at this for the US using the run plot that we have. We have the price index for wages here on the vertical, and we have year on the horizontal, where it seems to be the case. As time is progressing, the amount of baskets that can be afforded with wages is increasing. Okay, that's pretty good. So purchasing capabilities are going up. Let us transform real wages into percentage change form and see what else we can notice. Well, once again, we do lose one observation by doing this. And then looking at the run plot up top, we have percent on the vertical, year on the horizontal. It seems like there's fluctuations in the real wage, just like we've seen in prior percentage change form variables. And this seems to be roughly the center. So somewhere between 1.5 and 2%, where if we were to hard calculate the mean, we would get a value of 1.50, or that we said that on average, real wages are increasing over time, so the amount of baskets consumers can afford with their income from labor, where on average, that growth rate is 1.50%. Okay, the other thing that we want to make note of, well, how does the real wage move with real GDP? We can turn to the scatter plot that we have below, where real GDP growth is on the horizontal and real wage growth is on the vertical. Where it seems to be the case, let's use, purple's fine. As we are traveling to the right horizontally, we can slightly travel upwards on the vertical axis, indicating a positive association between real GDP and real wages, or that real wages are mildly pro-cyclical. Okay. Let us now repeat this, but for interest rates. Here we're going to look at the real interest rate. This is the interest rate adjusted for expected inflation. Mathematically, this is just the interest rate minus expected inflation, where the interest rate, that is the nominal interest rate. So then interest rate posted on bank sites. So the nominal interest rate is what you are going to see when you go to a bank, you go to their website, and what are you going to earn in terms of interest by putting your money in a savings account. We are going to subtract this from what you believe inflation to be, and that will give us the real interest rate. What money will you earn on your savings account after you take into account what you expect inflation to be tomorrow? Okay. Looking at this visually, we're going to look at the real interest rate run plot down in the left, where year is on the horizontal, percent is on the vertical. It seems like there are fluctuations, and these seem to be the center of the fluctuations, which seem to be roughly about 1%. So on average, the real interest rate seems to be 1%. If we were to hard calculate this, this would be 1.06%, or that the posted interest rate, after taking into account expected inflation, gives us a positive number, or is 1.06, or that the amount that consumers will be earning on their savings account is outpacing inflation, where if they were to take their money out, they would be able to afford more baskets over time. Okay. Now, how does this move with real GDP? We can turn to the scatter plot on the bottom right of the slide, where real GDP growth is on the horizontal, the real interest rate is on the vertical. If we were to draw a line of best fit, and in this case it was already here for us too, as we are traveling right on the horizontal axis, it seems like I can travel ever so slightly downwards on the vertical axis, indicating that the real interest rate is mildly countercyclical, or that there's a negative association between real GDP and the real interest rate. Okay, so what have we learned? Excuse me. So after looking at inflation rate data, on average, the inflation rate is just shy of the price stability goal. However, it does get satisfied if we allow for one standard deviation of the mean in terms of our price stability data. What about in terms of agent purchasing capability? How are prices changing compared to income and savings changes in the economy? Where savings changes, we're looking at interest rates. On average, it seems like agents can purchase more baskets with their wages. We have a positive on average real wage growth rate, and we have a positive on average real interest rate. So agents can also purchase more baskets from their savings. Okay. So then with all this in mind, where we'll pick up next time is we'll start looking at growth in an economy.